Well, it's kind of neck. So where do we turn off the? Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Okay. There we go. I don't like hearing myself come back through the machine. Good morning. Welcome to Monday morning, BOCC. You're all here an hour earlier, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah.
I gave the board a couple copies, our month-end numbers and also the surface mine ordinance, the draft, kind of what we're working on. And that's the preliminary draft. It is on our website. The SEPA is going out by Wednesday. We'll have a list of changes that go, what changed. So there's kind of a roadmap for public to see. And we'll wait for comments to come back. We'll introduce it to the BPAC on next Thursday, but we're not planning to discuss a lot of it because any comments that are made, we want to have them made during the SEPA comment period so they can become parties of record if they so choose. And then it'll go planning commission in April and then hopefully to the board, we're hoping May. So we'll see what happens with the combined work group and planning commission, and we'll just kind of lay the path forward, but we're trying to kind of stick to the timeline so the board doesn't have to do another interim controls and we can get this hopefully finalized. So that's the draft surface mine. If you guys have questions, please ask. Wayne's the guru on this, so the guru. He and Jay and Andrew are working on getting this thing done, so.
If I could ask,
Yeah.
I got the sense from earlier discussions that you're doing what I'll say that up front, I think is the right thing. You're trying to give the special use permit the greatest flexibility possible so that you can account for situations that are, you can't cover every situation. Is that basically the ideology? Ground rules plus.
Exactly right. So there's a set of minimum standards that'll apply to each and every application. And then depending upon the specific circumstances of any given, there may be additional measures warranted.
Are there any circumstances where minimum standards would be violated by a special use permit?
In other words, waived?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And one more comment on that. We also did it instead of site specific for one.
Actually, it is violated then. If the answer is no, then they would be violated.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry.
And we're not doing site specific for one specific area based on an application that we had received. We're doing it countywide and what's best for the entire county. So
And at the moment, do you have any applications in?
no, none.
And this would apply to any applications in the future. So say tomorrow an applicant came in, would they have to abide by this or by the interim?
The interim.
Okay.
Yeah. These new standards won't take effect until you guys adopted them, hopefully.
That to clarify, that's assuming they submitted a complete application. So if it was incomplete and we're requesting additional information for whatever reason of incompleteness, and they wouldn't be vested until we received a complete packet.
Yeah, it would seem a wise thing to, it doesn't apply in this case, I don't think, but suppose there were 100 applicants trying to slip in under the door before it closes. That would put you in a rough spot, put us in a rough spot.
Correct.
Yeah.
I know this is predominantly on surface mines, but I see under here it also applies to race facilities.
It does. And that's all that is a rearrangement of the code. So there's zero changes whatsoever to the special use related to the race facilities. It's just the restructuring of the code.
Are there any sections here about which you're unhappy?
No, from going over the history of the file and the extensive amount of work that was done by the work group, and it's been years and years in process, as well as the continued interim guidelines. And so I think the purpose and intent is pretty well established. And I think we, in coordination with Jader, have captured that. And so I'm hoping it will be well received by the public.
If I remember correctly, the controversy was over some inconsistency within the code that made it hard to apply
Correct.
or to appropriately regulate. And so resolving that won't necessarily make everybody happy, because the nature of the beast is that surface mines tend to be a bit more controversial. But policies will be consistent. Everybody will know the rules ahead of time.
And that's the primary goal right there. Yes.
Is there any part in here that calls out the Southwest Clean Air Agency action permit or something like that?
Not specifically, but it does reference back to the Washington Administrative Code and the applicable regulations with respect to air quality, noise, et cetera. So,
And that would point to SWACA.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
I gave you each a packet of the planning and the building codes or applications that we received for February ending. Everything is on track for what we've predicted. Applications are still coming in. Mike says numbers are good. Wayne's numbers are good. The planning clearances and the short plats are a little bit higher than normal. So that's nice to see. The people are still doing stuff with their properties. I don't know if you have anything you want to comment on.
Just a couple of noteworthy items. As Tracy was saying, the staff consults are up. Or I'm sorry, the planning clearances are up slightly from last year. We're up about 10. And if you remember, there was a dip from 2022 to 2023. And we're seeing it start to rise again, which would be expected. We're going to see those fluctuations over time, just depending on market conditions, the timing of the year, et cetera, for building. We've also got a slight uptick in the addressing. You'll see that there's 8 on the year to date, which is, I'll say double, but it's from 4 to 8. And I think that's largely attributable to our new standing policy, where we're doing legal lot reviews and addressing for every application that comes in to avoid confusion down the road. So that's helping a bunch. And then again, pointing to the staff consults, we're at 26 on the year, 13 for both January and February. So we're seeing 3 to 4 of those a week, which is super encouraging. With respect to overall timeframes, we're still shooting for the 30-day review. And that's if we can't get a decision out, that means there's some underlying issue where we've had to request additional information. Admittedly, there have been a few that have slipped through the cracks, but once they've been brought to my attention, we've rectified that. So I just need to do a better job of keeping an eye on that stuff.
Would you repeat the time? You said it would take how long to do what?
So it's 30 days is our deadline, is what we've set. And so if we haven't issued a decision or requested some additional information at that point, there's an underlying reason. And if there's not, then I get involved and figure out what's going on.
So if I dropped a complete package today downstairs, I would get an answer in 1 month or sooner?
You would get some answer. So that answer would be, we've reviewed it. We need additional information. We've reviewed it. It needs corrections. We've reviewed it. It may be subject to SEPA, or we've reviewed it and it's approved.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
But
And
planning clearances are doing it. County.
Right. And the exception to that is planning clearances, of course. And we, anytime we can do those over the counter, there's specific criteria where they're eligible. And so we're hitting 100% of those that are eligible for over the counter. So, and
That's at the counter.
that's at the
Like
counter,
almost
right?
Same
Or if
day.
they come in online, the same day type of turnaround, those account, I want to say, for roughly 30% of the planning clearances that are coming in today.
So an example of that might be if I come to you on my 5-acre lot and I'm away from the boundaries and I say I want to put up 1,000 square foot outbuilding here, you'd look at it and probably be able to say, okay, right then and there.
On a 5-acre lot at that point, really we'd be looking to see if there's presence of critical areas. If there
Right.
are none, we can issue it over the counter. If there are, and the proposal is going to impact those in some way, then we would request more information.
So I'm still unfortunately having trouble hearing. So if I showed up today with my 5-acre lot and needed 1,000 square foot outbuilding, you would then have to go out to inspect the property.
Only if there were critical areas present on the maps. So that's why we can do it over the counter. If they get
Yeah.
dinged on the maps, then it may warrant a site visit to confirm it.
So for many normal situations, it'd be, yeah, you got it.
Exactly.
And that would be issued right then and there after you,
Right.
Pay
We
your
would stamp
fee?
and approve the site plan at the counter.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. The staff consult seems like they're growing. My guess is that's paying off in the overall process. Agreed?
It is, absolutely it is, because we're seeing more complete applications because people have better information before putting it across the counter.
So in all this activity, how are you doing staff-wise? Sounds like you're doing great because you're abiding by the time constraints, and that would be the metric I would use at the top level.
I'm really pleased with staff right now. We did have a planner leave recently and we were able to fill and promote from within for that position, which resulted in another opening. Currently, we have another internal candidate for that position. So we'll be looking at that this week as well. And so it's been very encouraging to see how the staff has been working together and them wanting to stay within the department, and we're able to promote from within. So it's helping a lot with familiarity with the rules, the processes, as well as the public.
So last year, we had some movement with multiple family, looks like duplexes. We've had only one application this year. I would expect with the announcement of this Sunrise Village on 38th in Pennsylvania, that those numbers will go up.
That's city.
Oh, that is in the city.
Yep,
That's
that's
right. I
there.
always forget
Yep.
that.
I wish it was ours.
Yeah. Okay. But that's certainly kind of reflects interest rates having a dampening effect on new construction. But I did notice that we had quite a bit of activity under new commercial and industrial, about $37 million, which is more than all of last year in that. What can you tell me what the big project is on commercial and industrial?
Morning, Commissioners. Mike Wilson, Building and Planning. Yeah, there's 3 large projects out in the industrial areas. There's Drax, there's a metal recycling company, and also an extension on EGT's grain terminal. So these have been big projects that have been in the works for some time, prior to this, and they just pulled the trigger and are underway. At this point, they're all casting foundations.
Mhm.
So they're well into the projects by now.
And I noticed that the new Bucks plant facility
Yes.
is gives a pretty dramatic look to the route into the old fiber mill.
Oh, yeah.
Huge,
I don't
huge
know-
transformation out there.
Yeah, I don't know if you had the opportunity to visit. It's quite an impressive facility. Very nice. I mean, state of the art, what can you say? It does a lot with what they have. Yes.
I attended the Clean Air Agency meeting as the alternate for Arn when he was out last week. And there was public comment about the fact that the accusation is that that company did not fill out the application correctly. And it was kind of interesting because the staff said, well, they are processing the application and they're going forward with the reviews and I think they gave their preliminary approval. And so we can probably anticipate a lawsuit because that was the veiled threat. If you don't do what we want, we'll sue. But and the Drax site is within the footprint of EGT, if I understand correctly what the map
Yeah,
was.
they all
Inside
kind
the
of
railroad
blur
track. Yeah.
down there,
Yeah.
So yes, they're,
I appreciate you attending that. My place.
Well, there was a really good discussion about whether or not there should be an increased number of sensors to detect air pollution. Currently, the major sensor in this area is at St. Helens School, which is a school that serves a community in poverty. And that would be very appropriate to know impacts of poor health. And he says, we're not anywhere as close to exceeding the safe limits for particulates in the air. So I also suggested that we have had population increases. So it makes sense to have more sensors, but most of that population increases in Clark County. So who knows? They're open to having more sensors. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, there's also in my mind, when I look at the data, the correlation, which is what it is between the particulates and the disease that they're trying to solve is very, very loose. It's like when the methanol plant was required to put stuff back into Columbia that was cleaner than the Columbia's ever been. It's like,
Yeah.
It's politics, unfortunately.
The next item, or my last one, unless the board has anything for us, I have an applicant that he is building in the city of Woodland, so it's not our jurisdiction. He has encountered some funding hurdles along the way. He recommended that our county look at the CPACER program, and CPACER stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy and Resiliency Program. It is something that I briefed the BPAC, the Building and Planning Advisory Council on. They did decide that they would support it if our staff wanted to bring it forward to the board. So I'm asking, what it is it's a funding mechanism. We would have to adopt an ordinance. We would roll out a program. It's kind of a checks and balances and check the boxes on our end of it. Once they meet like our ordinance criteria, then their bank would then record the lien through our auditor's office. And then of course, we would have first rights to whatever that means when they defaulted on their loan. If they did. This program, I've looked into it. What it could help is privately owned commercial, agricultural, industrial, multifamily with 5+ units, owned by a corporation, an individual, or a nonprofit. So instead of just hitting one area of the county, I would like to, if the board is supportive, I say we roll it out countywide, but it would be a new program that our department would offer and at least have that opportunity available if somebody does not or wants it. Apparently it's a lower interest rate funding mechanism through that they use the state, but
And what is the goal? I mean, what would it do for these applicants?
well, I believe it's a lower interest rate and
No,
a
no,
different
I mean,
type
what
term.
kind of improvement are we trying to encourage?
Well,
You rattled off the name and I didn't quite
it's
understand.
on our end, they have to meet building and planning if it's a county project. And that's all we would do. Nothing changes on our end. What they have to do is between the lender and the financing group, they have to do the clean energy and resiliency. They have to have separate inspections and meet certain standards. It's nothing that us, the county, would administer. It's something that their loan program would do.
So is it intended to shift people away from dependence on fossil fuels to other
Yes.
kinds of fuel?
Yes,
Okay, so that's
yes.
trying to help improve that. And would that include
HVACs.
power sources from converted from methane?
Solar panels, geothermal heating systems, energy efficient appliances, HVAC systems, lighting fixtures, water pipes, low flow fixtures, seismic retrofits, et cetera.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So in general, I would be opposed to this. It fits the category of trying to get some set of taxpayers. Let me back up. Interest rate is supposedly reflects the cost of money and plus a little bit of profit. Those are all somewhat intangible, but quite tangible at the same time. That is, the exact value is hard to pin down, but it is a real thing. The point being is if interest rate is subsidized here in some way, it costs somebody else something somewhere else. I could go along with programs that make that be totally available to everybody. So all these special interest groups kinds of things that we say, well, we want to, what is it, left-handed violin players? We want to benefit left-handed violin players. We've got to stay away from that. So barring some other arguments, I don't see why yet another program is going to be something I would be signing up for.
And I'm fine with either way. The applicant has asked several times, contacted me. I think he's reached out to Rick as well. And like I said, I'm just looking for, for board direction if you want us to take on that program.
So you read a list of potential applicants that seemed fairly comprehensive. Other than it seems like single family
Cannot be done.
development
No,
isn't included.
it's multifamily with 5 units or more.
So it's again, the big builders, the guys who already have the money, take advantage of.
And right now, the 3 that I know of are Clark, Whatcom County, and Pierce County. All offer this program.
And you can handle this?
I would be the one that would be doing it.
It would be free?
They pay, it's a
No. You wouldn't come to us and say, I need more staff?
Nope, it would be me.
I think Clark did 3 of them.
Clark has 2 of them that they've recorded and
Yeah.
done, and they have a 3rd one in on process with the same applicant.
Yeah, it's not a huge demand that I could see out there. It's just an option a builder can take if they want to meet these standards.
Correct,
They don't have to do it.
correct. They don't. It's just something that our county could offer.
And we're not supplying any money.
We're not supplying any money.
They're agreeing to certain types of, appliances and.
Correct. If that's what
energy.
they're building, yeah.
Yeah. And you could certify the project inside a city as
Yes.
well.
Because it'd be
So it's countywide.
incorporated and unincorporated. I could do both. Yes,
That's what the state law allows. So.
yes.
So interesting, if Woodland did not want to do this, we couldn't impose it upon them, could we?
It would be offered countywide, and then because they're recording it in the auditor's office, it'd be a countywide project or program.
So it just deals with funding.
It's the
Yeah.
funding piece. So I believe it's $500 that they pay for their application. And then we get 1% of their, up to $15,000.
But if, like Arn mentioned, Woodland turned the project down,
Right,
our approval wouldn't overturn that. They still have to meet local, the city's code.
right. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The city, I don't think it doesn't affect that. City would still have to prove that they want that building there.
Right.
He just, if he builds it a certain way, his lender, he gets a better.
Could use this funding
could use
source.
that.
Correct.
So
Yeah, we're
it's-
not taking their city codes or anything out of there. We're just offering a different funding source that would be available for throughout the county.
Now, extending that a little bit, if the city codes were such that they disallowed this kind of program, we couldn't override that, right?
Right.
Because they wouldn't get the permit, so it falls into the, thank you, got it. Slow, but sort of sure, just like a donkey. Or a pack mule, I should say.
So your next step is what?
Well, I'm looking to do, if the board, is that something that the board wants us to roll out?
I can't see that it's a huge burden. I don't think there's a ton of them out there.
I think,
This one.
it'll be a marginal impact, I think. But it does encourage the development of more affordable housing. We need more of those built to affect the overall rent.
Well, you don't know
And
that
then in
though.
terms of, industries or employers, it's just another little incentive to bring employers here, it seems to me. Pretty low costs to the county.
Those alternative energies and alternative appliances. I mean, we'd have to look at the holistic analysis. We've been operating under this climate change ideology that it's just a bunch of opportunistic BS. And this would be signing up to it, and it would have our name stamped on it. Well, anyhow, I don't think we ought to encourage anything that adds divisiveness and adds support for something that is destroying the nation with mandates.
We just did this last Tuesday where we approved a code that has increased energy mandates and everything else.
Oh, we don't have a choice there. We have a choice here.
We do have a choice.
No, you don't.
You just don't want to take it.
No, that's not how it works, unfortunately.
Yes.
You know that I've been struggling with that for a very long time. We could challenge that if we were willing to put out a lot of money and lawsuits. And meanwhile, a year or 2 or 3 go by and people who build in the county are going to be in limbo. What do I build to? So that's why that didn't go your way.
Well,
In sentiment, you know that
will
we're on the
agree to
same
disagree
page.
on that.
So
As far as this goes,
Yeah.
it's, if builder wants to take advantage of it, and it's not a big deal to us, we do get some funds off it for your work.
So the one cautionary red flag that I will be looking for as you bring a proposal to us is whether or not the award or the designation or certification of this permit in the fine print obligates the developer to follow prevailing wage laws and environmental rules and regulations that automatically jump the cost up. It's not the same thing as a loan where they make those strings attached to, housing trust loans that keep it too expensive to do a whole lot of development. This seems a little bit different. Anyway, I'll be looking to see if this is a way of truly keeping costs down, making it more affordable for folks to develop. So I'm okay with looking at a proposal, but that's one of the things I'll be looking for.
Okay, so I will get an ordinance up, ready to go, and it'd have to come in front of the board for the board to adopt before we could roll this program out with all the step-by-step and the application process. So, okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
In the minutes. Hi, Bailey. Make sure in the minutes it shows the division. Okay, thank you.
Looks like finance.
Thank you.
Good morning. Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. And today I'd like to start out by introducing our new Finance Manager who joined us just last week. And so I have with me Michelle Rapier. And so I just wanted to introduce her and let her say hello. Good
Good morning.
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 Nice to meet you all. Nice to be here.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Would you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know that if you prefer not to, that's fine, but
Just a little bit of background. Born and raised, well, actually born in the Northwest, but lived most of my life in Alaska. So for 25 years up there and mostly in oil and gas. So I worked for Native Corporation up there for 12 years and we acquired a
I'm
company.
sorry, you,
I what?
for whom did you work? I'm sorry.
ASRC, Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, for about 12 years. And we acquired a company out of California. So I transferred from Alaska to California to fix that company. And then came back to the Northwest because that's where all my family is. So I live actually up in Silver Lake.
Alaska to California must have been a culture shock.
It was an extreme
Yeah.
culture shock.
Did they stop you when you walked down the street with your pet moose and your /6?
Um,
Never.
There are some stories similar to that, but yes.
Yes.
So we're happy to have her, get her started on some projects with us. So this is our monthly report. We're in an odds part of the year. All of the accruals for 2023 haven't been finished yet. So there's some reporting that I really feel like would be, if I were reported, it will look very odd. So, so next slide, Bailey. So for example, our revenue versus expenses for, as of December, they're still in process. So I'd like to wait and report that to you next month when we have some of our accruals in that the auditor's office will be making.
So if I'm probably displaying ignorance at a very high level here. Accruals occur on a timetable typically. And I don't understand why there would be a delay in the accrual.
So for,
You should say we have a 3-month lag and then I understand.
so for example, on sales tax, there's a 2-month lag of the receipt of those. And so December's sales tax reporting, it just came in for December in the month of February. And so they're going to make their major accruals in the month of March.
Got it. Okay.
So,
External stuff will always factor in.
yes.
I just needed an example.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So those are the major ones. Your sales, most of your sales tax are missing. And And then that same goes for revenues for 2023. I'd like to be able to report to you some final numbers, but those are still in process. Next slide. The good news is on the sales tax, I was able to, because DOR has our information out there right now. And so I was able to gather November and December sales tax numbers and insert those into this graph to show you for most of the year, we were up on sales tax versus prior year. And in total, for the grand total for the year, we were up 6% in sales tax. So that's good, a good trend. Just as a reminder for 2024 though, I was very conservative and we booked a 3% increase over prior year. And so next slide, I do actually have the month of, oh, this is our recording revenue. So recording revenue, again, we're showing year to year, 22 versus 23. This is something we have been reporting for a couple of months. This comes from the auditor's office and this is their actuals. As you can see, for most of the year, we were less than the prior year on recording revenue. Looks like it's starting to level off as far as not double-digit decrease.
This is a reflection of sales,
Yes,
home sales.
or other
predominantly,
recordings.
Probably, yeah.
Mhm. And then next slide, they do have their January number in that's been booked. So I went ahead and I'm showing this. Again, we're off slightly from the previous year, a 2% decrease. So we'll keep monitoring this every month. This is something you'll see monthly. And so
On,
the slide.
like a slow mule, on slide number 4, or page 4, the percentage change is from the prior year's month.
Yes.
And is there a way of adding you did it, okay. Thank you. That's very efficient answering the question.
So the month of April shows a huge variation, a huge drop,
Mhm.
which suggests some major purchase must have been made in April of 22. And that's before you arrived here. Have you come across anything that?
Yeah, I looked at that, and I tried to figure out, looking at some of the tax collections. From what I could tell, part of it looks like it may have been related to, COVID. And your 2022 number was higher than I think normal. And so, there was quite a few lab, related entities that had sales tax proceeds greater than 23.
Okay, on slide 4, you put the total. On slide 5, is that a possibility also? How are we
Yes.
doing?
I can put the total. This one I got from the auditor's office, so I didn't change it. So I can put the total on that one if you'd like. I know just glancing at it, we're over $1 million down on recording fees for 23 versus 22.
Yeah.
And that gets-
Anytime I see a percent, I really want the universe to be hard nailed, so I know what I'm.
And of course, we've been watching the decline in document recording fees. That's a function of that.
Right.
Last year, yeah.
And that new $100 fee's taking effect real soon, or has it taken effect?
I believe the $100 fee took effect January. The next slide was, and it's still preliminary. I looked at it early this morning. The numbers haven't changed that much from what I forecasted. But this is just looking at salaries versus budget, which is one of our primary expenditures, particularly in general fund. And so salary expense for the year of 23 pretty much was less than what we budgeted. It was a little bit higher than prior year. But overall, our salary budget, we tend to come in under budget in the salaries, and that's a function of vacancies and such. So as you can see across the different funds, anywhere from 93% of budget to 86% of budget. So
So on this slide, is there any reason, is there any value in seeing an average increase per capita? The reason I'm asking is that in an ideal world, we would get so efficient that as people retired, we wouldn't add new people. And I'm trying to figure out some sense there when I see the revised budget, or I should say the comparison of year to year. I'd rather have fewer people and pay them more. And I'd like to be able to see that somehow.
okay.
So like had a column for employees or FTE maybe?
FTE count.
Yeah, FTE count and the dollar number average. The average doesn't mean anything because there are discrepancies in the salary and all that. It's
Yeah.
just trying to grab a hold of FTE count
Well,
and
Even if we had the FTE there, then it's easy to do the calculation on
yeah,
average.
although it's much easier if somebody
If
else
it's-
does the
yeah.
calculation.
You already have it on there. Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing the FTE because you kind of see what the growth in that is over time.
If our budget figure is reliable, the most important data is in that middle column, that we're not exceeding the budget. I mean,
Right.
that's the thing that we have to be careful of.
Right.
Um,
And as you know, we budget as if every position's filled for the entire year, and that doesn't happen in every department.
Right, that general fund number, does that, in your experience, does that seem high, 88.7?
No, when I was looking at some of your trends, that seems percentage of budget, 88%. Not really. I mean, the industry that I came from, we ran about a 17% turnover ratio.
So out of the general fund, we tend to pay for utilities and
Yes,
paperwork and maintenance, groundskeeping contracts and all that. Then that's 12% of the budget. And I think that tells me that we aren't spending enough in those in those categories beyond labor.
yeah. So what I'd like to do is that one slide that I was saying that I don't have, still preliminary. I'd like to be able to show you what we budgeted for all expenses versus what we actually spent. Is that where you?
Sort of, except we may ignore categories with your eye and expertise, seeing a typical organization would have the following. The budget would be somewhat the following. So in the case of questioning whether 12% or 11.3% is enough, you would say, well, in a typical organization, actually, I think the number is closer to 100%, but that's just. off the cuff. So I'd like to see what, because we are neglecting stuff as we all know, or have in the past.
So on this slide, what I can do is, this is just salaries, but I could do, we have all of our major expenditure categories, natural classification like salaries, benefits, supplies, services. I can show what we budgeted versus what we actually spent for the year.
Yeah, I don't know that I need to see salaries. I'm assuming that we have a fully burdened aggregate, and that's fine. It's the other things that we don't pay for, or that we do pay for, but we ignore some. I'm trying to figure out what it would really cost us if we were trying to stay in business normally. Because in government, we can always raise taxes.
The next slide is that for the month of January, I felt like we did have enough information to show you our expenses for January versus prior year. So this is January of 2024. All the expenses in general fund and all of the expenses for the road fund, health fund, building and planning. These are your four largest funds. And where we're at as far as compared to last year, it shows that we're under a little bit from 2023, but there's some items that happened. So for example, transfers weren't booked in 2024 yet in January. There was one for 300,000 that goes to benefits administration. That just hasn't been booked. It was booked last year in January. And then for road fund, some of their internal service invoices weren't paid yet, but January of 23, they were all paid. So you've got some variances, but I don't think it's anything to be concerned about at this point.
So
There's just timing issues.
So the name Benefits Administration isn't very clear. What's provided by the Benefits Administration?
I believe that's a special program that relates to retired sheriff deputies. It's a very special program that we help pay for their benefits. And I believe it's
That's where we have to cover long-term care for
Long-term
retired
care, mhm.
firefighters.
yeah.
And I thought that
Which their grandfather, that was a grandfather type program. And so the expenses have been slowly
creeping up.
but it's a program that will be phased out eventually once you're satisfied paying for all those benefits. So
Can and I don't know how to use this chart. Do you have advice?
So what I was trying to do was just say, are we on track with our expenditures versus last year the same time? It's only 1 month. It's not very meaningful because it's only 1 month. And like I said, there's a couple of timing issues. Some things last year were paid in January. This year, they're going to be paid more like February or March. So I just wanted to get started on being able to produce this.
So this is a prototype.
Yes, this is our prototype.
And so I won't expect much significance out of this until the first quarter is
Well,
over.
after the first quarter, that's what I would say.
But
And
you're
I-
not,
and I
but
have
you're
a-
not expecting a change in the negative numbers.
Right,
So and that's what you want to spend less than last year.
right. I don't
If you
think we're
can,
going to
if you
spend,
can.
I don't think we're going to spend less than last year, but I want us just to be looking at it from a comparative lens.
But
And I will, I will also be showing comparative versus what we budgeted and where we stand percentage wise. For 1 month, we should be like 7%, 8% in that range of total budget.
Yeah, that, back to your question, Dennis, yeah, the negative is, it's just hard to understand it in a context where we really know we are typically financially challenged. So fancy word of saying year after year, our costs increase. And so when we see something that's dramatic like this, it's really good to understand it. And I think things will iron out over
Right.
time.
And you haven't weathered a recession yet. The revenues actually do slow down. The rate of increases doesn't keep up. Then
Yeah,
you have to
I
do-
mean,
then
it-
you have to do cuts, yeah.
Yeah, and we don't, exactly, yeah. If there is a recession, then something from your office about how the private world is doing is going to be helpful by comparison.
Right.
The public is typically suspicious of us because we seem to be more immune to setbacks than.
Well, and I think those suspicions will grow for at least the next 2 months.
Okay,
The end of
I'm
April.
suspicious of that
Those
suspicion.
checks get cashed and then there's a reset. Because paying property taxes angers most people.
So the next slide is, this is just a prototype for what I hope to be showing you once we finish up our 2023. I want to show you what our actual fund balance ended up at December, what our budget stabilization fund balance. And this one, I do have the number. It's $2.1 million is right now in the budget stabilization fund. The total of those two funds basically make your reserves, and then we'll compare those to the annual expenditures for 2023 to make sure that we were on track with the target of at least a 1%, a 1 month reserve. Which I'm very confident we are in compliance with that.
If memory serves me correctly, April is one of those months where the cash flow gets pretty dicey because we haven't had the big infusion of property taxes. But that's one of the reasons we've built up the reserves, to make sure we make it through those
Yeah, cash,
lean months.
having a cash reserve. Okay, so this next slide, this is just to keep you updated on the projects that we're working on. Of course, we want to review our financial policies and procedures. A lot of those haven't been updated for several years. And so during the course of this calendar year, we'll be working on those. Also program write-ups, working on creating a knowledge base that's accessible by the treasurer's office, the auditor's office, our office, basically to keep some information about knowledge base about some of our major programs. So we completed the one for rural public facilities, and that's in our shared drive. And the next one we're going to be working on is the lodging sales tax, and should be complete here in the month of later March. And we present first to the Finance Committee, and then the pleasure of the board, we can present any of these to the board as well. The lodging sales tax, I'm going to recommend that I'm going to ask to present because I'd like to look at some changes in that and how we're booking those lodging sales tax. We're putting half of the lodging sales tax right now into a fund called Cumulative Reserve. And the title is, it doesn't correlate with the actual proceeds. So it's supposed to be spent on tourism related activities, or on tourism, infrastructure, capital projects. So,
So the original plan was the cumulative reserve was to finance the purchase of the Hofstad Bluffs Visitor Center,
right.
which we
right,
no longer own.
Which we no longer own.
So obviously I need to relabel and reallocate those funds.
I think it's just a matter of changing the
Right.
title of the fund or fixing the fund. But the good news is,
That
that
shift was to go,
lodging,
shift was to go to the Six Rivers Bicycle Trail completion fund.
Hmm.
Maybe.
the good news is on the lodging sales tax, those funds have come in higher than what was originally budgeted over the last couple of years. So another one is assist human resources with an evaluation of a self-insurance program. And so anticipate doing that with human resources, possibly in May, June, July, to be finished by July. The next one is improvements to our budget monitoring and create some efficiencies. So we've already started working with IT to help us. Our salary database is just a major Excel built database. And so instead of manually inputting all those things with each and every pause transaction, we'd like to be able to pull those in straight from PeopleSoft and be able to do more forecasting, assist HR when they are working on collective bargaining agreements to try to forecast what would a certain COLA percent cost in total, things like that. So anyway, so I'm very excited about this. IT is working with us and helping us look at what we can do by pulling data in from PeopleSoft. So. And then the final item is supporting the facility needs and space assessment steering committee and looking at opportunities, for example, for possibly financing some or looking at different options for facilities, improving and increasing our facilities. So, and that's it for today's presentation.
Can you tell me a little more about that last one?
So the last one is looking at different alternatives and options for space, be it looking at additions, new facilities, or lease facilities, for example.
So what kind of metrics and what kind of stakeholders do you see in this? And I hate the word stakeholders, so I apologize in advance.
So this committee's already established. I think Commissioner Dahl sits on that committee. Savannah is leading that committee, looking at what are some of our needs and how do we satisfy those.
So this is the committee that has representatives from each of, I
Yes,
think,
all-
5 different campuses
Okay,
that we operate.
I remember now.
Yeah,
It's
so
that
it's-
committee.
Yeah, it's.
I'm good. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I'm just there to support in case we want to run some numbers and do some financial pro formas of like, if we did do new construction and we got a loan, what would that cost the county as far as budget impact? That's all.
We could have grandiose plans and then the budget lady brings us down. to
Yeah.
reality.
I'm going to bring back to reality.
Okay. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Welcome aboard.
Thanks. Nice to meet you all.
Okay, we can head right into agenda review. Are you back up? I have you and then Public Works and the auditor.
Okay. Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. So this is our first amending the 2024 budget. We also have a short one item amendment for the 2023 budget. So I'll do that one first. The 2023 budget, we had to amend the liability claims fund, and there was insufficient budget to pay some of our active claims. That's from the risk pool. It wasn't significant. It was $12,200, but I had to pull that from fund balance in order to get those items processed for year end. So this is just cleaning that up, making sure that we have board approval for that change.
Now, that's not on tomorrow's agenda.
Oh, excuse me, no. And so let me clarify. I'm coming to you today for March 19th's public hearing.
Oh,
Because on March 18th, I'm sorry, but I have to take my mother to a procedure. So I'm here early.
this is actually next week's agenda.
Yes, and I just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to see the items, and we have an opportunity to discuss any. So that's why I'm here early. And I'll still probably have I'm going to look over all of this one more time, spend some additional time on it and make sure that everything is correct and accurate. And so, but for the most part, I think we have everything in. We did a call for budget amendments for 2024. We had some departments come forward with a few items. The majority of the items for 2024 have to do with the closing and finalization of the collective bargaining agreements. So most of these you'll see direct labor, medical insurance, Social Security, retirement, and paid family leave. Most of these corrections, adjustments that the departments are requesting or that we're requesting on their behalf have to do with the COLAs that were approved as part of those collective bargaining agreements. And so in total, all the collective bargaining agreements amounts that weren't in the budget, it was about it was a little over $1 million, just in summary. The general fund was $393,665 for those COLAs and the associated benefits. We had budgeted, we had some excess budgeted in non-departmental of $450,000 that will actually offset that particular item. So we came in pretty close there and estimating estimating those COLAs, but special revenue funds, particularly the road fund, they had quite a bit of, they have some of our larger numbers of staffing, and so their COLAs were a little over 300 and something $1,000. Enterprise funds, which is the next largest one, are your IT, things like that. Oh, those are service departments, enterprise funds, building and planning, some of those. So anyway, so a little over $1 million worth of budget amendments relate primarily to the collective bargaining agreements that were finalized. And if you'd like, I can go over each one here, but they're listed by the department. And if you'll notice on page 1, yeah, I do have page numbers, thank goodness. Page 1, all of those are related to COLAs. Page 2, most of those are related to COLAs, except when we get down to the sheriff's office. And on page 2, their adjustments are primarily related to they've received approval back in February for a change in 2 positions that they would hire as part of their staffing related to the mental health, behavioral health project. And so those staffing are now showing up as direct labor, benefits, et cetera. But then there's an offset to the direct expenses of the mental health tax. It's approximately $206,000. So while sheriff office is going up, mental health tax expense is going down. And actually, it's probably going to go down a larger amount than what their personnel are going. So it's going to cost a little less. The jail, towards the bottom of page 2, the NAFCARE agreement that you previously approved change where we extended that contract, but we also added the service provider to provide an additional counselor or mental health professional. And so you'll see a reduction in offender servicers where we actually had that staffing position on our books as a direct labor, and now that's going down. So doesn't quite offset it completely, but almost.
Kathy, I have heard from cities that the change in drug possession laws from being a felony to a gross misdemeanor has had a huge budgetary impact on the cities, including they have to do the jail costs for those. Have you seen that shift in revenues coming in? Has it been noticeable at all yet?
Well, we're starting to renegotiate those contracts with the cities. Marin has set up meetings over this month, I believe, and looking at the contract. We haven't actually changed our daily rates since 2021. And so those rates are being reset, and we're asking to reset those rates in the new contract.
I understand that, and that is something that should be
And-
ongoing, but just the sheer volume of revenue, because they're paying for more prisoners'
Right.
time, I think.
Right. So Marin did forecast when she did her 2024 budget, she did increase her expected revenues for jail contracts.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
On page 3, these are primarily related to COLAs, direct labor increases. On the clerk's office, at the bottom of the page, those
Well,
are.
wait a minute,
I'm sorry.
on juvenile detention, about $100,000 increase, and we're still only taking care of 6 to 12 kids in the detention facility, and it's one of those
On page
traps,
3,
it's one of those things we're trapped in because the state law requires us to have the 24/7 program. Yeah, I'm just expressing, irritation at that requirement.
yeah. So on this one, yeah, it's about $100,000 increase. And this one also, we relooked at some of our formulas on the retirement. This is another example of why efficiencies, building some better efficiencies on our budget work papers for salaries and benefits. If we could bring all the information in from PeopleSoft, we'd have less room for errors. And so, for example, retirement, you'll notice that's a large increase there, but it's primarily related to looking at those formulas and making sure we had all the formulas correct. So page 4.
Get through this and then we can take some questions on it.
Yeah.
Okay, would that
So-
be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Page 4, the clerk's office did ask for some additional increases in printing and binding. She reviewed her budget and determined that she didn't have sufficient printing budget. And so she's asking for a $4,000 increase there. And then also an increase in other, there were some positions you had approved in the 2024 budget, and she needed to buy some additional furniture and outfit their offices, make sure they have a space to work at. And so that's the $16,230 increase there. Then as we go down, the coroner's office, there's 2 items here that are in addition to the COLA and review. Repairs and maintenance. Y'all had previously approved the video recording software and equipment. And y'all did that for 2023, but they weren't able to come until 2024. So the bill is now showing up as a 2024 bill. So really, you're approving it as a 2024 expense now instead of as a 2023 expense. The last item is professional services. That's the Dr. Nelson's contract for the additional autopsies that he's performing, expected to perform this year. So that's the $30,000. The WSU extension, there's just some changes in the bars coding there on professional services contract. We put them in the wrong bars when we set up the budget, and we're correcting that, as well as we also found that they were missing some of their other expenditures. Some of their postage and telephone was overlooked, and their utility expenses. So they're asking for their budget to be amended for those items.
I'm assuming there's a line item for Kelso Utilities. And I know before the new morgue was built, WSU Vancouver's office was over at that location, and in a weird sort of arrangement with City of Longview, WSU Extension paid for the City of Longview utility charges for the coroner's office. It's all kind of one account, so that has been changed, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
They're
so,
now completely in Kelso.
Um,
One of those odd little details that happened long before I came on board.
And then non-departmental, this is a reduction in the budget. This is where we had put a placeholder for covering the COLAs on the general fund. So it's a reduction in budget of $450,000 there.
This might be unfair, but did we anticipate, how close did we come to anticipating the results of negotiations? It says 450 here. I mean, we
Yeah.
had plenty of money and we always set it aside
Yeah.
without it being specified where it goes to preserve our negotiating position.
So the general fund, the actual collective bargaining, the COLAs cost $393,000. And so we had more than sufficient ability to cover that.
Great.
Nothing else on that page. Page 5. Those are related to COLAs, and then we have a little bit of adjustments in our revenues on general fund that we wanted to record. And so that's $293,000 that will offset some of the expenses. And if you'll notice, our fund balance, our request for decrease in fund balance is $133,000 on general fund to fund the other miscellaneous items.
So LT1, that's a new category.
Um,
I think that's the Shorelines reforestation project up at Tootle Park.
yes,
Yeah, I think it had earlier been handled under Public Works and we shifted that to the Commissioner's office.
right,
Right.
right. But it's always been in the general fund, that LT1 expenditure. Other adjustments, the county roads is primarily related to the collective bargaining agreement closure. And the road fund that's $373,000 that they're reducing their fund balance, and they have sufficient fund balance to do that. So I'm not concerned about that. These others, similar things, they're all related. You'll see with their direct labor. The GIS O&M on page 6 is 10,000. They needed an additional $10,000 to cover a contract. So they're requesting that. It's coming from fund balance. Victim witness expense, we did some cleanup of the positions that are funded off of that, and it actually reduced their budget by $46,000. That's on page 7. And therefore we reduced the transfer from general fund over to the witness victim witness program. Sorry, tongue tied on that. We also had a request to increase professional services contract on page 7 pretty significantly there for low income housing. This is a result of some disbursements that the board approved that they're wanting to make sure that we have budget capacity to complete those. And so those were programs that were previously approved.
Those are the monies that go to the affordable housing programs that we've contributed to.
Yes. And I think there's several that y'all have approved over the last month or two. So the sheriff's canine program needed some additional expenses for canine and vet and small tools. And so they're funding that from fund balance. And then, and also from additional revenue source for the 4,000. The Sheriff Bearcat, this is on here. It was previously done, but after year end, we had moved fund balance from general fund, but it looked like there was some additional residual for $2,863 that need to be moved from general fund. to completely separate that fund as its own fund. So Law and Justice, we had a couple
So,
of,
excuse me, on that Bearcat fund, I find that a little strange. That fund's been around now for at least a couple of years. There was something that we owed on that fund.
yes, so there's a Bearcat and you have, I believe there was a purchase, maybe a borrowing related. There's a borrowing related to the Bearcat. I know
Right.
that. And then they asked last year for a budget amendment to be able to use this fund to maintain, because they're also charging other entities for the use of the Bearcat. And so it had always been under the general fund, and therefore they lost any of the residual because at year end, general fund rolls up into the one area. So they're trying to keep it completely separate and distinct. So,
You know, I think that's a good thing. I remember that Bearcat battled substantially, but you would not anticipate a repeat of this for the following year. then?
no, this is a one-time.
Okay.
Law and Justice, we had, we needed to correct and actually reduce their motor pool amount, and correct that. And then that increase the amount that's going to go to fund balance. And the other items are related to their COLAs.
So this is a special fund that pays out of a special sales tax we collect
Yes.
for law and justice purposes. And there are something like 7 positions in the law and justice field, including deputies, clerks.
Yes.
uh,
And then this past year we were
Prosecutor.
looking at the revenue stream, and there's sufficient revenue stream. We added a new detective that y'all approved during last budget cycle is now on this fund as well as a couple of other clerks positions. So we're able to fund a few more positions based upon the revenue stream.
So do you recall whether the general fund is contributing any money into that fund? There had been a time during the last recession
Yeah.
in
No.
which rather than laying off employees, this general fund was subsidizing those it was kind of a
Yeah,
weird little
no.
shift.
No, there isn't a
Okay, so
transfer.
revenues have gone back up, so.
Yeah, there isn't a transfer in. This is, the revenue is sufficient to cover those positions, and we'll continue to monitor that to make absolutely sure that we're not putting positions on the fund that it can't absorb.
Right.
On page 8, these are all related to the COLAs, except for the Expo Center revenue. They wanted to increase their revenue that they budgeted. They significantly under budgeted their investment income, and so they wanted to increase that. And then they also wanted to make some corrections to their gift shop revenues as well that offset their expenses.
So now the concept for these last 2 pages or so is that each of these activities has its own funding source and they're treated separately, almost like a separate division, separate
Right.
business.
Yeah, so what you're seeing here, these are your mostly your enterprise funds where they have their own revenue streams, own expenditure streams. And so any increases that we're seeing pretty much are offset by if they have increase in expenses, are offset by increases in revenue. That makes any sense. Yep. So for example, emergency management, they're increasing their revenues, but they also had increases in their expenses, and they're directly offset each other.
But the increase in revenue came from the general fund.
On emergency management revenues, these are their billing, that I believe they bill out different departments, different areas, and it's primarily the general fund, yes. Building and planning, theirs was related to their COLAs, stormwater, same thing, information technology. Some of this is related, we had a position in the budget that we're correcting. It's not a position they had intended to fill. And so that's showing a reduction in some of their personnel, direct and benefits. But they did have an item they need budget capacity for related to a severance payout. And then they also had their PeopleSoft licensing had increased over what they budgeted. That's 34,702. And then they also had, again, here's an item where we budgeted, you approved a budget amendment last year for the HVAC system for their server room. They weren't able to get that complete until 2024. So we're having to now show it as 2024 expense. That's the 25,500. Information technology, they also had a grant program that they didn't have budgeted. They need to have budgeted now. That's 80,000. And then also they're requesting $50,000 from their technology reserve account to help support the camera and security project that they're undertaking at the Hall of Justice. So we have been working on that project, and the good news is that they were trying to prioritize and make full use of a grant funding and some facilities funding for the locks and things. With this $50,000, we're able to complete the majority of the priority list and then some. And so I'm familiar with this project also because I'm sitting in for risk management and helping them. And this is a really good project looking at improving not only the cameras, but the access doors to all of the exterior of the building and also just some of the other key areas in the building. So for example, making sure that we have cameras at all the major doors and things like that for security purposes and improve their security and access points in that building. Any questions on that one? And then the final one, page 10. So most of these, the second item on that list is industrial accident. We've been looking at, this is our workman's comp program. We've been looking at what we budgeted for active claims, and I feel that we need to increase our budget there by $100,000, and that's going to come from fund balance. And we also had an increase in what it's costing us for our annual insurance, excess insurance policy, and I want to make sure we have that budgeted as well for $20,000. This next item, purchasing, this is an enterprise fund, but this is one that I'm probably going to recommend. Both Sean and I are going to come forward here when we start working on 2025's updated budget. This fund had revenues coming in, and it looks like was supporting several expenses related to the telephone system. And so we'd like to recommend moving those expenses over to IT And in the interim for 2024, we don't have sufficient revenue streams to cover all the expenses. And so we're requesting a transfer in from the general fund of $26,000 to carry us through this year, till we can fully evaluate everything and move it to its right places. We did for the 2024 budget, take the mailroom and move it out of purchasing services, this enterprise fund, because it really was there wasn't really any revenue stream from mail fund. It's a pass through. We charge the departments for their mail, but there isn't any excess to cover the personnel, for example. So this is something we're going to probably clean up in 2025's budget. The equipment revolving account, these are related to the COLA. Motor pool is related to a replacement of a vehicle that was damaged. And I believe Sean has previously briefed the board on that, that it's more cost effective to, instead of repairing a vehicle for $35,000 to just go ahead and purchase a new vehicle. Election expenses, these are their COLAs, and they're funding that with a transfer from their elections reserve fund. That's it. Sorry, so long.
Yeah, I know we had at least one question from the audience. Flo?
Hi.
Are you on?
My information might be outdated, so please bear with me. I'm concerned about the juvenile detention center, correct? And what I know from the past, and you might correct me on this, was that we did, what's the word? We didn't hire, we accepted from other counties students to detain in our facility. And I don't know if we still do, but if we do, we can possibly up the charge on those inmates while we have them. That would give us some revenue, or at least increase it. Also, I know that there are at least 3 pods, and I know because my husband used to work there, that they're totally separate. So in that case, now I know the building, I'm not sure if you can do the building or the pods, but I do know that considering the pods are separate, if we have an overabundance in the adult facility, then we can possibly reserve 1 pod for their overflow and charge the monies from the adult facility and give that to the juvenile facility, because you still have, no matter how many kids that you have in there, you still have your upkeep of the building. You still have the same amount of employees because you don't know how much you're going to fluctuate. And I'm still rooting for, if I would like to see more of our juveniles in there, only because I believe that they deserve to at times, but the courts are being lenient, which I'm against. However, if they don't crack down, I'm also thinking that above where the old jail used to be renovated for the juveniles, considering there's a low few of, the count of is what, maybe 30 at the most. And I don't know how many of that would facilitate, but perhaps maybe we could have $100,000 can go a whole long way to restructure the top of that building to accommodate juveniles. You can turn off the water so they don't plug it and have the same disaster they had last time. But $100,000 can do a lot. And I do know that juggling and also upping the fees for other counties would bring in revenue as well. So I don't know if you can do that. I'm just asking if you can.
I can answer some of that. We have contracts with, I think, Columbia County, Clatsop County out of Oregon for their youth, probably Pacific and Wahkiakum. And we negotiate those every 2 years, I think.
Like that.
So I think a couple of them were just renegotiated, and they do pay us to take those youth. We had 11 in there last week when I was over there, and we have 2 pods that are empty. We can't put adults with juveniles because that throws all kinds of things in the state into cattywampus, but I can tell you, I've started a meeting with Judge Hahn and George, and we're looking at that facility as a possible for the unused spaces. Right now, when we have kids in rehab or we have kids with mental, they get shipped out of our county. The closest rehab, I think, is up, the boys is up in Seattle and the girls is someplace else. Some of the mental stuff, we're actually shipping kids to Utah. So we're just in the starting phases of seeing if we can't do some conversion with that over there. So it is being looked at.
Okay,
It just is kind of a long process flow.
okay, thank you. By the way, I like that haircut.
Yeah, it threw me off coming up the stairs this morning. I tripped.
One of the interesting dilemmas that we face with juvenile detention or the youth services program is that is operated under the judges. So everything we do, we have to work collaboratively with them. And they have pointed out that there are some very strict standards to prevent mixing adults with juveniles. And there, you'd think that would work, but they've been really resistant. But we also have this other need where we're sending kids out from the community to get them more serious treatment. And why not? That's right. We could be able to use that, I think, more effectively. So I'm excited. Don't know if that'll actually happen. A lot of details still have to be worked out, but there's some great possibility to keep the kids home for their more serious treatments. Or in the home county, not at home.
Yeah, my colleagues had kind of given me the okay to work with that group, and the goal is to actually bring it to a workshop, not too far down the line, just so people can kind of see where we're at.
Just a general financial protocol question, since you're talking about the end of 2023 finances. Are the books officially audited, or what is a procedure on that?
Yes, our books are officially audited by the state auditor's office. And so typically around May time period, those are finished. And in the summer, the auditors come in and perform their audit of the financials.
So
The
is
full
that-
set of financial books and statements and schedules and footnotes and all of that.
Okay, very good. So, and cities would have a similar audit performed on their books annually, or is that just county? What?
I don't know about the cities. I know for the.
Yes, the cities, the
Yeah.
cities do. Well, I mean, I know Longview has it on
Yeah.
a very regular basis. I
We
believe
just-
Kelso does.
I think on the county was completed in September,
Mhm.
I think, this past
Yeah.
year.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions of Kathy? And
You,
just a reminder, this won't be tomorrow. It'll be the
This won't be,
following
this
Tuesday.
won't be tomorrow. This will be March 19th is when we have a public hearing scheduled.
Okay.
Kathy, you apologized for this being very long, but we learn a lot about the county that we're supposed to be running, when we study the budget. And it's a good review of decisions we've been making all along since the last budget. And so it is, there's a lot of details and it's good for us to go through it on a regular basis. So thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. I couldn't do it without some of my staff. Tanya is our budget analyst and she helped me put most of this together, and she joined us in, I think, September. And so she's done a fantastic job of getting acclimated and educated on our budget. So.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Good morning, Commissioners and public. Susan Eugenius, County Engineer. We have several items on the consent agenda tomorrow. The first one we have talked about numerous times. It's the Eric Creek Fish Passage Project out on Abernathy Creek Road. We have finally gotten all our paperwork approved by the state, so we're going for the call for bid tomorrow with a bid opening on April 10th. So this will be the first of many projects you'll be seeing over the next 6 to 8 weeks for our summer construction season. The next project on the consent agenda is the consultant agreement with Mandalay Communications for the Clear Zone Inventory Project. There were a lot of questions on these the first time I brought this to the board, so if Commissioner Dahl and Commissioner Weber will humor me because I went through it Wednesday, I'll bring Commissioner Mortensen up to speed on some of this. Excuse me. So the purpose of this is to identify objects in the clear zone that could be a hazard to drivers. The clear zone is the unobstructed, relatively flat area beyond the edge of the traveled way that allows the driver to stop safely. So this project will collect data using 9 high-resolution cameras for the entire roadway network, which is approximately 526 Centerline miles. They will collect images, LiDAR, and a database of all the obstructions, the obstacles, is anything within 50 feet of the center line that is greater than 4 by 4 inches, which is the size of a standard mailbox post or a sign post, or has a diameter greater than 4 inches. And for visual for everybody, that's about the size of a grapefruit. This data, once we obtain it, we will be using it to update our database, our mobility and gizmo database. We'll use it to update our local road safety plan. The data will enable us, because the LiDAR will give us a basic topography. So when we're developing projects for the grant applications, we will have a relatively accurate LiDAR that we can do a very quick 30% design on. One of the questions that we were asked is about the availability of this data. It is only available because it is safety data. It is only available for county users in public works. It's exempted from discovery by U.S. Code Chapter 23, Section 148. Did I give you enough?
We're going to ask you the nasty questions tomorrow.
You want to ask more questions tomorrow? Sure.
It always seems that way.
Yes. All right, so what else do I have on the agenda? So then it's just a follow-up on the paperwork for the certification of the road levy fund that was signed by Chairman Dahl and myself, and it's just a communication to CRAB telling them what we have spent. And then item 5 is setting up a CRP for the Kalama River Road Slide Mitigation Project at approximately milepost 13.5. Anybody who lives out on Kalama River Road will tell you that this is a section of roadway that we have not paved for at least a decade. We maintain it in gravel. We had some acceleration in the movement last year, and we had a preliminary site investigation by our geotech. His recommendation was to do some monitoring for a minimum of a year. And then at that point, with the data that he gathers, we'll be able to determine if we can fix it, if we can slow it down. So this is a CRP to set up, and that CRP stands for County Road Project, to set up a road project number so we can start the investigation. It's for $600,000. Of that, we're anticipating the initial phase of monitoring and the drilling of the monitoring wells that will need to be about $150,000. And after that point, we'll know what we plan to do moving forward.
Any questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. The only other one I saw, I don't see, oh, there she is.
Good morning, Commissioners. Camilla Eastman, Chief Accountant for the Auditor's Office. For your review, I have the subrecipient agreement for ARPA funds for City of Woodland. We did receive our signed copy back, so I have it in front of you for signature. I didn't know if you might have additional questions or anything on this.
They're moving forward finally. It's been
A
quite a
year.
while, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, they're very excited. They have plans for the funds already, so
Okay,
Sounds good.
I think we're good. Thank you.
perfect. Thank you, Commissioners.
Mhm.
Susan, did we, were you asking for the agreement with Woodford land appraisers? Or is that another agency?
I believe that might be a facilities item to appraise for real estate for sale. So that I believe was to facilities and negotiate
I
for.
think he asked about it last week, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think, yeah, we
Yes.
reviewed it. Thank you. I'd
You're
forgotten
welcome.
where it came.
Any questions from the audience? Yeah, come on up. Yeah. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Just make sure the green light. Got it? Okay, good.
Yes, Steve Cowson, Supervisor, Cowlitz County Diking District 15. I haven't, I just got back into town from 3 months gone. But the last time I checked with Patrick Robertson, nothing has been done towards finding another supervisor for Diking District 15. Nobody applied for the last election. And I was wondering if that's something we could get in the works and to replace the person that resigned.
So remind me again, 15 is
Willow Grove.
Willow Grove,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
I thought we had some people that were gonna possibly run for at the election, but they didn't, and we've got at least one or two other people now that have expressed that they might be interested in doing it, but if I remember right, when I volunteered 8 years ago, I believe the commissioners had put something out asking if somebody would want to volunteer for that because it wasn't filled.
Sure, there is a volunteer application form for lots of our boards and agencies that you might be able to just pick up next door. If you want to hand deliver to those folks to have them, that gives us a paper and they ask questions about background and interest and.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, because I was under the understanding that the commissioners would put something out to fill that position. No, I don't.
We will.
Yeah.
We will, I will check and make sure which way we go on that. And obviously we need to get it done, so.
I mean, the two of us that are there now, we have been utilizing, call in like I was in Arizona for 3 months. The other supervisor, he fishes in Alaska, so he's gone a month, sometimes 2. And so, and with him up there in remote areas, it's hard for him. And if we don't get the position filled, then we can't have our meetings for the month.
Yeah.
So, it might work faster if you know the people that are interested, if you deliver those applications.
Okay.
You could wait, but our public notices, those are kind of,
Yeah.
it takes,
And
it's.
should
takes
be
some time.
next door, right?
Right next door.
Yeah, I can stop,
clerk's
pick one,
office.
two up on the way out.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
Yeah.
appreciate your
we-
time.
Yeah, we'd be glad to.
Okay, thank you.
Then let us know who you recommend.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ron.
I've heard some words about a new position, a risk manager, but I haven't seen anything. What's the status?
I know an offer went out to a person. I think we might have a deal on it on the 11 o'clock. I'm not sure. But an offer's been put out, and when I understand it was, they should start first part of April.
So on that, the board never approved the step request. In
That
public.
still- That still needs to come to us. I think it might be at 11 o'clock.
Human resources.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just thinking it's a problem when an offer is made before the board has made a
Well,
public
I-
decision.
I should, I should say if everything's approved, then they would start. I think it's all subject to the offer. I probably didn't make that clear enough, my understanding of it. I know there's an interest in a person and an offer is out, but it all has to still go through.
Okay, so my question would be, I've been attending meetings, I haven't heard anything that you, the board, approved a risk manager position added to our county staff for some benefit to our county. Has that been already approved and you're just filling a position?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's been a position.
It's been vacant for a period of time.
It's actually a little more complicated than that because we've had a risk manager for a long time. Not the same one, which has been a problem, but we also have a risk analyst. And I don't recall that we had a risk analyst also. So that came to me as a surprise last week when I realized there is a risk analyst. Overall, I think there's an issue that I was going to bring up to HR at some point, just a general categorization about the process we follow bringing people at the manager and above kind of level. And I don't care for how we do it. I think the commissioners are the ones where the buck stops here, and you can fire us, but we can't fire staff. And so I think the commissioners, I think we should change the way we do offer positions at the director and reports to the director that they really need to have the signature of two of the commissioners. Because I feel our staff is the most important thing we have. And it's taken quite a long time to get the quality staff we have on board now at the senior levels. And I think there were a couple instances where people have gone off and brought people on board that I don't think were the right choices. And as long as we're responsible for an issue of transparency and all that, I don't want to have to tell you, go check with the department head. I'm going to want to tell you what's going on. And it's too hard to do that how we currently do it.
Okay, well, I appreciate your responsibility. I, as a constituent, am here to support you in that responsibility and also call you on that responsibility. Normally, when there's a vacancy, just like you said, there would be a protocol that says, hey, Now is an opportunity for us to check the position, make sure that we need the position, make sure that the description is fully compliant now with what the need is in fulfilling that position before you fill the position. So I'm presuming that all of that protocol was clearly undertaken for you by the Human Resource Department.
And it gets complicated because there's a lot of institutional knowledge around, and it's a small community. I know because I came from the outside, and I was really surprised that everybody knew everybody. And even some issues earlier today, there was an approval of this contract that could give people the option to get a favorable interest rate on something or other. And apparently that's what someone, the chairman has been involved with in the past in some way. It's really good to have all of that out in the open so we really know whether we're being swayed or not.
It's almost sounding like you need a risk manager for the risk manager, if I follow your line of thinking and talk.
We had a longtime risk manager, a former retired police officer
Okay.
who retired. And it's been a revolving door trying to find the right set. We've had 3, 4 people appointed, and the last one just left about a month ago.
Yeah, and I think we made some updates to the description and how that reported before for Jeremy.
Yeah.
When he took it and before he left. So there has been some look at it, Ron, and some changes.
Well,
to
very
it.
good. Okay.
Yeah,
so-
there's specifically since I came on board, we've had 5 risk managers. First one was Clyde Carpenter, and he had been with the county forever. And he was at step 9, which happens after you've been at the county forever. He was a law enforcement officer at some point in the past. Rhonda Hollis, who was in local government in Oregon, came in at step 2. She was unknown to us. And then she was replaced by Nicole Tideman, who was known to us for a variety of reasons. She was at step 8. And Victoria Blosel came in at step 1. And then Jerome Austin came in at step 3. And we clearly have an issue after Clyde with trying to stabilize the position. During that time, the risk manager reported to the director of finance or the chief of staff or the board. And now it reports to the director of finance, but that is one of the positions that is very visible, very important to us. And we're not doing such a good job on it. And I think that one probably in my book would report directly to the board or very closely, intimately work with the board. So I wouldn't want the segregation. Right now, the finance manager or finance director can go ahead and do the offering without the specific approval of the board. And I think that's a problem. And that can be done right now at step number 1. That's the policy. You come in to the county, you get step number 1, unless you get a approval from the board to go higher. Now, we've done approvals to go higher for different positions, particularly if the candidate is at the PA's office or something like that. But we're talking about pretty specialized professional organizations there. And that's well credentialed. Anyhow, I think that that question of approving the step is going to occur about now.
Okay, so it sounds to me like one of the key points is settling who this person will report to also.
Well, yeah.
Any other comments on the agenda items you saw?
Earlier on the building and planning discussion, talking about the new finance program, that, would be an optional, program. There was discussion about the fact that there would be, in that process, there's funds that would come back to the county. I'm wondering if those funds would be offsetting for the amount of time that the county spends processing those applications.
I don't know that I have a clear answer to that.
We haven't seen the details yet. I think that's the next step. We can
Even at that, we don't,
read the details and find out. what
even at that,
promise
we won't
is.
know until after the fact.
How soon do you think you'll be seeing that plan? I know she said,
Well, it needs to be put into an ordinance, so I don't know what the time frame, whatever that.
okay,
Clark County has it in process. They've done it. They've done, I think, just 3 of them.
right.
They might have some answers,
Hopefully,
better answers, yeah.
hopefully we can find out from them if they've had any success with it. Thank you.
Okay. We can move into 11 o'clock. Human resources.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I don't have any requests at the moment, but I'd like to go into an executive session for qualifications of an applicant to finalize some things.
How long, Jessica?
Start with 10.
10? Executive session, 10 minutes, qualifications of an applicant. Okay. Okay, back from executive session, no decisions were made. I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Hello again, Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I do have a request for the board from Office of Administrative Services. They are requesting to start the risk manager applicant at step 7 with 2 weeks vacation.
Yeah, I want to speak against that. I'll start out with a very brief introduction. Our most important resource is staff. And we, the BOCC, have the trust of the people specifically to conduct business on their behalf. So we must take pains to oversee that those whom we hire reflect the values of service. Our most important responsibility is to assure that the staff have an attitude of service to the public. I note with pride, with the pride that I have in the county staff, that to the public, we are a reflection of each other. I misbehave, it reflects badly on our staff and vice versa. So we are responsible for everything that happens that is not under an elected individual. So I'm going to talk about that in the following way. I had, at the end of the last session, listed out the number of risk managers we've had on board. There were 5 risk managers, and I've been in office 7 years, so you can do the arithmetic there. Clyde Carpenter was the first individual. He was step 9, and when he left, he made $7,000 a month. Rhonda Hollis was our next risk manager. She came in at step 2. She had oodles of government experience out of Oregon, procedures and all that kind of stuff. And she came in at step 2 and was paid $6,900 a month. Nicole Tiedemann was the next risk manager, and she was well known in the county. She's a lawyer. She had all kinds of understanding about the law. And she came in at step 8, which is what was essentially a lateral transfer. And that was $7,900 a month. Victoria Blosel came to us out of the blue, and she came in at step number 1, which is the typical entry-level step. If you want to bring somebody in at a higher level, you got to get approval of the board. Jerome Austin came in at step 3, and he was $7,854. And he was at step 3. I didn't mention that. The new person, step 7, I think, in HR will straighten me out there, is $87.50 a month.
$87.78 a month.
Okay. I'm glad I didn't exaggerate. And that's step 7. In addition to that, there was 2 weeks vacation that is being asked for. And I did mention that the risk manager did report to the board, to the chief of staff, or to the finance director, depending on the time. I want you to note, out of that list of people, the ones who knew the county inside and out were the ones who were paid the most or that were at the higher level. So from Nicole Tiedemann, like I said, she'd been here a long time, and that was step 8. Clyde Carpenter, step 9. So you're trying to make a request to offer someone right about what we would offer a very experienced individual in the county. So then we've discussed certain things, and we may have a difference of opinion based on the answers to the series of questions I will ask, and that's asking either you, Jessica, or Kathy. So what are the prioritized skills required in the job?
I'll take that question. So our risk manager is overseeing our coordinating and liaison with our risk pool, and also assessing risk situations.
In that order?
Not necessarily, I'm just.
Okay, I'm
yeah.
hoping because the
want me
list
to-
could be really long. I want something that's bang, bang, bang. Priority number 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. So I would say priority number 1 for a risk manager is really looking at our procedures. We have an accident prevention program, for example, that has been drafted but has never been publicized to our supervisors, never been utilized in our training programs. And so my prioritization for that person would be that would probably be one of the number 1 things on the list. We've had many requests for risk analysis, recent, for example, the mail processing and some of the hazardous materials that have been not at our county, thank goodness, but at other entities have been coming in and exposing those workers and employees with some hazardous items. And so we need to beef up our training and our procedures for that. We don't even have any procedures on the dangers of mail handling, for example. So I'm looking for the number 1 priority for this person to help us get our accident prevention program updated, revised, and out there, and being able to utilize it with our coordinated and utilize it with our training programs. That's probably one of the first things on their list.
Okay, and is there a requirement or a component that requires familiarity with any of the governing laws?
Yes, there are many things in that accident prevention program that do correlate with L&I, that correlate with OSHA, for example, things
Okay.
like that.
And is there a component that requires interfacing with the public in potentially contentious scenarios?
Yes, I'm sure in our risk management position, yes.
And is there a component that requires investigative skills?
Yes, there is. When we have incidents, for example, when we had the fire at the landfill, when we had incidents at our jail, investigating those along with the directors for those areas and looking at potential risk mitigation for future activities.
So we would probably, as interviewers, have a matrix that says plus or minus for each of the candidates that we had in mind.
Yes.
Okay, and maybe a weighting factor that depending on our priorities. Okay, I already spot one difference where we might have the difference, you and I, and that is, I think procedures can be had, but the handling of people, interface with, and context with the law and the public, and familiarity with the organization and how things are done here are pretty important. Okay, investigative skills too. How many applicants did you get? In total, of course.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I had about 27, 20. I know it was over 25 applicants, 20.
Okay, that's a healthy number. And how many of those had county staff experience?
I know of one candidate that had county experience. I think that was the only one that had county experience.
Okay. And how many had direct experience in a government job?
I don't have those statistics with me as far as my matrix, my review matrix.
Half, fewer than half,
Oh, fewer than half, fewer than half. There's probably only a handful,
only about 3 maybe?
possibly. Mhm.
Yeah. And for the down selection, of all of those, you down selected it to 2.
I actually had 3 candidates that we brought in for in-person interviews. I had selected about, I think there was 6 that I had selected to do telephone interviews with just myself. And then I brought in 3 candidates to do in-person interviews.
Okay, in this specific request for steps 7, is that a request? What's the rationale behind the request, which is to override the county policy?
My rationale is that the candidate that I'm requesting step 7 for has over 32 years of experience in management, operational experience, risk experience related to the financial industry, but also in operations. And so 32 years of experience coming in. I would not be able to attract that type of candidate with a number of years of experience if it weren't for the ability to have that step 7. When we post jobs, we do post them with the range, the salary range. And so candidates looking at the positions, if we didn't post that range and we posted only step 1, you would have very few candidates apply for your positions, including myself. When I came, I would not have applied for the position if it had been at step 1. And if that was the only thing
Oh,
there.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to go into.
I'm using that as a correlation. The candidates look at the range that's posted, and so to decide whether they're going to even apply.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. Candidates want to know how much headroom there is also and all that. That goes without saying. Our circumstances related to hiring you could be different, and we're given that essentially we didn't have any other viable candidates. We were thrilled to have you, and I'm still thrilled on, even today, your presentations were exactly what I would like out of a finance director. But I don't see you as someone I might have chosen to sit as on the policy board. It's a different skill set required. It's a different outlook on life. And so I'd like to tie 32 years to, if someone came in with 10 years experience, would you not consider them?
Oh, yes. And some of the candidates that I telephone interviewed, had less experience than this particular candidate, yes.
Okay, so how did you discern? My point being is that I don't think the job as it stands right now, 32 years as an answer doesn't mean that the job we have warrants the 32 years.
I
You're
agree.
saying that the candidate warrants higher pay because of experience. That I can buy, but that applies to the job is where I'm having a stumbling problem, because you had a lot of choices between
Yeah,
candidates.
I did. So I looked at in total, many different things. Some of the accomplishments of the individuals, and in this particular case, the accomplishments that were on the resume and that I discussed with the candidate, and the ability for relationship building with the departments, because our risk manager, it is key and critical that they work with all of our departments and help to look at risk with them, not for them, but with them. And so I looked at those things as key and important, as well as the experience. So the ability to communicate and to make presentations was also an important factor as well.
Okay, this candidate for whom you want to do this had investigative experience and all that?
Yes, in the operational experience, they had situations where they did have to investigate different things related to security risk, related to financial fraud, things like that, which also impact our county.
When I see thanks for the public, there are two candidates in question. One came from the county and one did not. One has 32 years experience described. The other one has probably 20 years experience. I don't know, but it's much more of a law enforcement, or as that candidate would say, it's a peace officer, and making that distinction quite clear. The issues that I've seen from sitting here interacting with the risk manager was based on the history of those 5 people, and the interactions were, well, I don't want to get too in it, but the biggest factor I see is when we get a tort, we have to deal with the tort. We have had here 2 people, 2 citizens, and 2, maybe 3, with some pretty serious accusations. And those do need to be investigated. And that's something I put a fair amount of value on, because the last thing I want to do here is sit in front of the public and defend something that is indefensible. And you can see where my bias then turns there. Based on the investigations of the person, we, the board, are going to have to decide what it is we're going to do about that. But I've got to trust what comes to us, and trust comes in very heavily. It needs perspicacity and honesty. And I have not yet heard the argument that would tell me we ought to go to step 7 on this. 2 weeks vacation, it's the same thing. Why would we give county resources for buying something about which we're somewhat uncertain, while the other one we are certain? I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. Let me ask Jessica, in case this is germane, how easy is it for you to get recommendations on prospective employees?
Are you talking about like our reference checks?
Reference checks.
I mean, the typical response we get from other employers is their dates of hire, potentially their salary, recommendation on hire or not hire.
Yeah. And then we've experienced the opposite, where somebody got good recommendations only to turn out that they wanted them out faster than anything. I'm only putting that out just so we understand that there is a lot of uncertainty. I think when you bring someone on board, you've got to be clairvoyant to stay at a 50-50. That is to say, half the time it's a good deal, half the time it isn't a good deal. One of the uncertainty factors in bringing a new employee on board is if they don't know what they're stepping into, that increases the factor. It's a two-way street. Talented people can go elsewhere. And I don't want to go through another risk manager fiasco and be accused here of manipulating the risk manager in order to avoid some kind of adjudication of some kind. So that uncertainty is very much the case with somebody who hasn't been in the county versus someone who has been in the county. Let me, the bottom line, I would not give the 2 weeks vacation. I would not do step 7. If this person were willing to come in at a significantly lower step, I'd keep my mouth shut.
I don't believe this candidate would accept the position at a lower step.
That tells me that even though we met in executive session and all that, where no decisions are made, the decision essentially has been made indirectly.
I'm just saying, I don't
Right,
believe.
right. No, I'm saying they're making it for us. I've never been very good at being squeezed, and I feel this is a squeeze.
Yeah. It's the board's decision. I'm just saying what I believe.
Is this a different offer than you would have gave to the other person?
I don't believe so.
Wait. Ask that again, please.
Said, I asked if this was a different offer than would have been tendered to the other person.
The answer is yes, because I wouldn't go for step 7 either. But
Well, I
You
know,
were-
I
you
know
were-
your offer is different.
You weren't
I'm
asking him.
Yeah.
yeah, but
He said no.
instead of tying this and saying the value to the value is very difficult to determine within the construct of the county. The value differential is such that we're struggling to offer higher pay for what?
So is it
I
possible
believe
that
we're-
the
I
other,
believe we're offering higher pay for a demonstrated experience and ability to fulfill this job. And this candidate, I believe, has the skills to do the job and to excel at the job, actually. So,
You know what it is in the industry, they will not give, I've got lots of experience here. A candidate comes to you and says, I want a job. And you say, oh, excellent. Oh, you're doing, oh, you make what? No, I'm sorry. We can't offer you that much. And the candidate might say, it doesn't matter. I'm in it for the opportunity or other reasons. You won't get a job offer. That person will not be offered a job because the conventional wisdom, and if I were you, I'd challenge me on that because I often go against conventional wisdom. Anyhow, conventional wisdom is that employee isn't going to be around for long. And I just went through a list of how many risk managers we've had in such amount of time. I would play it much safer and much more economically viable.
so what if neither candidate would accept the step 5? Then where do we go?
Well, at that point, we know that we have to figure something else out, right? We don't know that now.
I don't know, there's really only two candidates that successfully are competing for this position, because the third candidate we brought in, I don't believe would flourish in the position. So there's only two candidates that I ultimately just had my decision based upon.
Well, Kathy, I am convinced that you've done the due diligence that's required, reviewing the applications, the requirements for the job. This is a position that reports to you at this point in time. We asked you to conduct the study and to hire a risk manager. You've justified, as far as I'm concerned, the legitimacy of offering more than step one to a very well-experienced person who meets the qualifications for the job. So I don't have any problems accepting your recommendation and approving the request.
Am I going to say something or not? Many years ago, before I was a commissioner, and Dennis was in his office where I'm in now, I had a meeting with him and I asked him, what does a commissioner do? And he explained to me, he said, the commissioner gets requests from staff and the commissioner works to fulfill those requests. And I left that office thinking, I can't think of a less useful answer because it absolves everybody of any responsibility for anything when you're sitting up here. My view of the world is that each of us is really responsible for one whole hell of a lot, including attitude, how we conduct things. And sometimes you have to do things that you don't like or don't prefer. It's just a different world for me than that world. And I'll harp on it again. I've had lots of people report to me in line over many years, and these are not just Joe Schlocks. These are people that are like a symphony conductor has the virtuosos in there. You got to make it work together. And if it were my money, which is something I would always ask, is it the same answer? And I'll stop here because I could get a bit too personal if I go.
Well, Mr. Mortensen, I'm surprised that you pulled out a quote from however many years ago we had a conversation like that.
That's how
That's not the-
surprising it was.
That's not the conversation I remember at all. And that's certainly not something that I have done. I've been very active in creating and advocating a whole set of different policies and expecting staff to carry them out once we get agreement from the board. In your situation, you don't have agreement with the board and you're mad because your favorite candidate got passed over. I don't think that's appropriate. We have professionals
No,
that have been tasked
no.
with the job of hiring the best possible candidates. If we don't support the people that we put in charge of these decisions on our behalf, then we should get rid of them and find somebody that we can trust to do the job.
You've shown me once again you don't understand me, and you never have because it's not in your lexicon to be of that ilk.
And
Now-
it is apparent that the feeling is mutual.
Now,
So
we-
I rather than continuing a debate,
all you got to do is make the motion, sir.
all right, I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of our staff with the hiring of a new risk manager at step 7 with 2 weeks, starting at 2 weeks vacation.
You have a motion? Any comments, questions? One question for Jessica. Is this something way out of norm that we've done, haven't done before?
No, with this much experience, I wouldn't say this is out of the norm. We've hired other directors or higher level management at step 5 and above. I don't have the exact statistics. If they'd come with little experience, then step 1 is the norm. We wouldn't go that far out of step 1, 2, or 3. And then the 2-week vacation is not outside of the norm for exempt level positions.
We've granted that stuff before.
Mhm.
So, Mr. Chairman, you know this individual quite well that's in
I-
question, right?
I do.
Does that influence your decision?
You know, I've tried very hard from the very beginning to be clear that I would support whichever way Kathy decided to do. If it was the other person and you were asking this, I'd support that. I'm trying real hard to not, yeah, I've had experience. I've worked with her. She's worked for me and I've seen her do some things, but I also know the other candidate and I don't have any issue with the other candidate either. Um, and I don't believe, and I would expect you to tell me if you felt like I've put pressure on you for this person. I don't believe I have. I believe I've tried to stay back and offer what I've been asked. And I think I would treat both the same. And in this case, I would support their recommendation.
Is this a good time?
Go ahead.
Regardless of who you hire at what level, does this, when you hire somebody in the situation, does it come with I can't remember what the term is. Basically that if there's a problem, you can hire them with no repercussions in the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, what is it?
So our exempt level positions don't have a probationary period per se. They're at-will employees. They can be terminated at any time.
So if they don't work out, the axe can come down based on your decision, or do you have to come back to the board?
For a position like this, we would typically come to the board and keep them apprised of the person.
Okay. I think that covers my question.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing any. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries. Anything else from HR?
That is all on my list unless the board has anything for me. Thank you, commissioners.
Any miscellaneous before we adjourn? Not seeing any, we will adjourn.